Oh, I wasn't supposed to kiss the groom? At first, Tyler Rochester and I had nothing in common except the fact that our mothers happened to be best friends, automatically making us best friends too. But that was 10 years ago. Now, I was 25, managing my family's farm, and Tyler Rochester was the last person I wanted to see. But you know what they say, the more you hate something, the quicker it appears. What are you doing here, Tyler? I grunted, tugging hard on my horse's reins. Peeking beneath the brim of my Stetson, I assessed the man before me. As usual, he looked prim and proper, in a blue dress shirt, casual black slack, dress shoes, and wire-frame glasses. His image contrasted with the wide expanse of fields around us. Some things never change. That's no way to greet an old friend, is it? He grinned with an infuriatingly charming smile. The same smile that used to send my teenage heart aflutter. I didn't realize we were still friends, Tyler, I shot back, especially since you up and left without saying goodbye. Not very friendly behavior, you know. I needed more than a goodbye. I needed clarification, but Tyler disappeared faster than I could blink. He shoved one hand into his pocket and adjusted his glasses with the other. We have a lot to catch up on, Denny. I softened despite myself, relaxing my grip on the reins. Duke snorted, releasing a familiar neigh in Tyler's direction. Hey there, boy, he chuckled, closing the distance between us. He stopped right in front of me, patting Duke's chestnut mane. The afternoon sun glinted off his blonde hair, creating the illusion of a halo around him. He was no longer a 17-year-old boy. This was a full-grown man with muscles that rippled in his shirt as he caressed my horse. We stood there in awkward silence, except for the rustling of grazing horses in the nearby paddock. Why was he even here? Never mind. I didn't even want to know. Out of sight, out of mind. That's enough, I tugged on the reins, steering Duke away from him. I don't know why you're here, but surely you can see yourself out. Actually, Ma wanted to move back to Wyoming. I brought her back, and I'm also here to plan my... I really don't want to know, I snapped, annoyed by how interested I was in his words, or how much I enjoyed the rich timbre of his voice washing over me. I'll drop by to see Aunt Julie when she settles in. Aunt Julie and my mother maintained their friendship even after she moved to LA to join Tyler. That was how I found out he moved, through his mother. I laughed mirthlessly, and without waiting for a response, I kicked Duke into a trot, heading away from the source of my biggest heartbreak. Duke seemed to feel my insistence propelling himself towards the farm's dirt path. The rhythmic thudding of hooves against the dirt path usually soothed me, but today, it only seemed to amplify my frustration. Damn you, Tyler, I muttered, urging Duke into a faster gallop. If only I could ride away from the memories of that night as easily as I could from Tyler. A quick glance back revealed an empty field. Of course he left. He's pretty good at that. I continued riding, past the main house, past the workers' settlement, and even past my waving foreman. But the sound of galloping hooves behind me made my heart skip a beat. There's no way. I looked over my shoulder, and sure enough, Tyler was behind me on Midnight, my mother's horse. His dress shirt now hung open, exposing his muscled chest as it flapped in the wind. I thought he'd left. You've got to be kidding me. I dug my heels into Duke's sides, urging him to go faster, but it was no use. Tyler had always been the better rider. In no time, he was behind me, his laughter carried by the wind. It's been a while, but I still got it. Go home, Tyler, I shouted, struggling to hold back my smile. The absurdity of this entire situation was starting to get to me. Not until you talk to me. He matched my speed effortlessly, even holding back to be on pace with me. His glasses were gone, revealing his striking blue eyes that carried tiny specks of green in them. Gone was prim and proper. He now looked like a roughish cowboy on his way to loot a small town. My hands pulsed, tired of the high-intensity chase on my own farm. I knew Duke needed water, and so did I, so I veered off the path suddenly, hoping to lose Tyler in the process, but he matched my pace, even pushing past me to the shore. We slowed the horses, letting them drink, and I slid off Duke, legs shaky from the ride. This is ridiculous, I said, unable to hold back a laugh as I looked at Tyler. I wonder what the workers think of me now, getting chased down by a man. They know we're friends, Tyler patted Midnight, kissing the side of her neck with an exaggerated sound. Also, you're worth a chase. I brushed off the dirt on my denim jeans, pretending his words didn't just send my heart into overdrive. Since when did you start talking this much? Tyler used to be timid, choosing all his words carefully, but now he moved with careless swagger that had me questioning everything. He seemed to mull over my question for a bit, making his way to a lush patch of grass at the side. I work in Hollywood now, as a talent manager. I kind of get paid to talk. Hollywood? Glitz and glamour Hollywood? My teeth clamped down on my tongue, holding back the flood of questions I had for him. I'd managed to hold back on asking about him from his mother for 10 years. What harm would one more time do? I remained silent, tying the horses to a pole while they lapped at the clear stream of water. Tyler got even more comfortable, interlocking his palms behind his head, eyes closed as he basked in the sun. Moreover, I muttered, kicking him with my boot-covered foot. What are you doing, Denny? Grab the horses and leave. Tyler acquiesced, scooting over to the right. Against my better judgment, I settled next to him, pulling my Stetson over my glasses to block out the sun. So, the farm is doing well? Tyler asked, making small talk. Yeah, it is. Silence stretched on again, but we remained here, laying in a bed of our unsaid words. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden glow over the lake, and it felt almost magical. Contrary to when we first laid down with space between us, we were now shoulder to shoulder, ignoring our little shuffles to be next to each other. Nostalgia gnawed at me. Things used to be this easy. Maybe it wasn't his fault that things changed. Maybe it was mine. Maybe I shouldn't have kissed him that night, next to the lake, underneath the stars. Maybe I chased him away. To hell with it, I started, turning my face to his, but the words died in my throat as Tyler's lips brushed against mine. As if no time had passed, familiar butterflies filled my stomach. The same electricity, the same spark. It felt so right but so wrong at the same time. I attempted to pull back. What are we doing? Yet again, Tyler stole the words out of my mouth. His cold palms trailed up my neck, pulling me onto him. He tasted of mint and a twinge of cigarette smoke. For a moment, both my heart and the world stopped. Then, just as soon as it started, Tyler pulled away. His eyes were wide with shock, and he scrambled to his feet, almost tripping over himself in a haste to get back on midnight. Tyler, wait! I called after him, but he was already galloping down the path, leaving me bewildered and breathless. I touched my lips, tracing the tingling aftershocks of his tongue. It felt like a dream. What just happened? The next day. Could you drop by Julie's house when you're done? My mother pleaded, nibbling on her toast. Her fair hands held her toast daintily, and she balanced a teacup perfectly in the other. I sighed, taking a deep breath of the aroma of fresh coffee and toasted bread that filled the kitchen. Sure, Mom, I can do that. The more I tried to avoid Tyler, the more fate seemed to push me towards him. That's great. She's been awfully busy with Tyler. Mom, I gave her a pointed glare, my jaw tightening. The kitchen light highlighted her graying hair and the fire lines that had started to etch themselves around her eyes. She looked at me with a mixture of concern and understanding, pursing her lips slightly. Just take her this pie. I know she'll appreciate it. I nodded, taking the pie from the counter. The warmth of the pie tin seeped through my hands, grounding me for a moment. I'll be back soon. Thank you, sweetheart, she said, her voice soft. I could feel her eyes on me as I walked out, the scent of baked apples lingering in the air. Outside, the sun was just starting to climb, casting a golden hue over the fields. I called over the foreman and gave him the instructions for the day, my mind already half occupied with the task ahead. Hopping into my old truck, I set off towards Julie's house. The truck's engine grumbled beneath me, the vibrations of familiar comfort. As I drove, memories of Tyler and me as kids played in my mind, each one tinged with bittersweetness of what could have been. When I pulled up to the Rochester house, I parked and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. My mind drifted back to my first kiss by the lake after prom with Tyler. Neither of us had dates, so we went together, more out of convenience than anything else, or so I thought at the time. We wandered away from the noise and lights of the school gym, clambered into his old Volvo, and drove to the lake. The water shimmered under the moonlight, casting a silver glow over everything. Tyler had seemed nervous, fidgeting with his tie. I have something to say, he murmured, his eyes refusing to meet mine. Me too, I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to tell him how I felt, that I loved him more than best friends, but fear of our small conservative community held me back. You go first. Tyler had looked at me, then his eyes wide and vulnerable. No, you go first. Gathering my courage, I leaned in and kissed him, my lips trembling against his. It had felt like fireworks, like everything had finally fallen into place, but then he pulled away, his expression one of shock and fear, before running off into the night. What happened to the worst he can say is no? Google lied. I shook myself from the memory. The sound of a sports car zooming out of the garage drawing my attention. A gorgeous redhead was behind the wheel, her sunglasses perched on her nose as she sped past me. I wondered briefly who she was, but brushed it off, picking up the pie and heading to the front door. Julie opened it before I could knock, her face lighting up with a smile. "Denny, it's so good to see you." She looked older, too, with more wrinkles and gray hair than I remembered, but her warmth hadn't changed. The smell of fresh lavender and baked goods wafted out of the house, enveloping me. "Hi, Mrs. Rochester," I said, handing her the pie. "Mom thought you might like this." "Oh, you tell your mother thank you," her eyes crinkling at the corners. Come in, come in." I stepped inside, the familiar coziness of the house wrapping around me. Everything looked almost the same, down to the crocheted doilies on the armrest of the sofa. "How have you been, Denny?" Julie asked, leading me into the kitchen. "I've been good," I replied, taking a seat at the kitchen table. The room smelled like cinnamon and freshly baked bread, the scent mingling with the aroma of the pie I had brought. "Busy with the farm, as always." She nodded, setting the pie on the counter. "I'm glad to hear it. You've always been such a hard worker." I smiled, but my eyes kept darting around, half expecting to see Tyler. I didn't know if I was relieved or disappointed that he wasn't there. Maybe both. Just as I was about to leave, the front door opened, and in walked Tyler, looking almost as surprised as I felt. He avoided my gaze, his jaw tight. "Mom, you wanted me to help with something?" "Oh, good! There's a list on the counter for you." Julie barely glanced up from where she was putting away the pie. "Denny." Tyler finally looked at me, his eyes flicked away almost immediately, and he rubbed the back of his neck. It's good to see you." "Yeah, you too," I said, the words feeling awkward and heavy. Julie handed him a grocery list. "Can you get these for me? I'd go myself, but I'm swamped with work." Tyler nodded, taking the list. He fished around in his pockets for his car keys, then frowned. "Where are my keys?" "Jessica took your car out," Julie said absently. Tyler huffed, clearly annoyed. "Great." Julie looked at me, then a hopeful glint in her eyes. "Denny, could you drive Tyler into town? Just for a few things." The more I ran, the less I could hide. I hesitated, but then nodded. "Sure, I can do that." The drive to town was quiet, the tension between us thick enough to cut with a knife. The truck's engine hummed, and the dusty scent of the old vehicle mixed with Tyler's cologne, a sharp, clean scent that brought back too many memories. We went from shop to shop, picking up the items on Julie's list. Almost done, we entered the town's biggest grocery store. The familiar scent of fresh produce and baked goods filled the air, and I couldn't help but feel the pang of nostalgia. Mrs. Henry, the store owner and the farm's major milk customer, greeted us with a wide smile. "Denny, Tyler, it's good to see you boys together." "Hi, Mrs. Henry," I said, giving her a polite smile as we walked to pick up a carton of milk. She leaned in, giggling like a schoolgirl. "I told you, Denny. I told you two would end up together." Tyler stiffened beside me, and I could feel his eyes on me, but I kept my gaze on Mrs. Henry, forcing a smile. "It's not what you're thinking." Tyler remained silent for the rest of the shopping trip, and I couldn't even be bothered to care. Why should I care about him when he didn't give a rat's behind about me? As we left the store, stepping into the sunlight again, I spotted Weston, the son of the town mayor, and Tyler's old arch nemesis. He grinned when he saw me, toting a holstered gun to match his police uniform. "Denny?" "Hi, Weston," I groaned, feeling the air rush out of my lungs as he pulled me into a tight hug and messed up my hair. "You never got back to me on those drinks," Weston said, his brown eyes shining with mischief. He'd been asking me out to grab a drink for months, but now I kept taking a rain check. "I'm sorry," I laughed as I tried to fix my hair. "You're not." The warmth of his hug lingered, a stark contrast to the cold shoulder Tyler had been giving me. What's the harm in giving him a chance? "How about we do dinner instead? You pick the place?" Weston's eyes bulged in disbelief. "For real?" "Yeah, I'm down." Tyler honked the truck's horn impatiently, and I glanced back to see him glaring from the driver's seat. Weston raised an eyebrow. "Are you okay with the whole Jessica thing?" I don't know," I said, confused. "What's up with this Jessica chick?" I wanted to ask, but Tyler's persistent honking didn't allow for further conversation. "I guess I'll see you around." I waved goodbye to Weston. I made my way back to the truck. "Take care, Denny," Weston called after me, watching as I climbed into the passenger seat. Tyler's grip on the steering wheel was tight, his knuckles white. I couldn't bring myself to fight over the driver's seat, and he didn't say a word as we drove back. When he pulled up to the Rochester home, I finally broke the silence. "You're really something, you know that?" Tyler turned to me, his eyes flashing with anger and confusion. "Yeah? Well, so are you." "Me?" I exclaimed. "You're the one flashing mixed signals like a broken steer light." And with that, Tyler got out of the truck, slamming the door behind him. I contemplated getting off to help him with the groceries, but I thought better of it, folding my arms across my chest with a humph. "Tai-Tai," a shrill voice burst out from inside the house, threatening to destroy my eardrums. Following the voice, the redhead I had seen earlier bounced out of the house, launched herself into Tyler's unexpected arms, and plastered her lip gloss-coated lips onto his. The kiss was anything but brief, and I was the unfortunate audience. Mrs. Rochester appeared next to my truck, picking up a grocery bag. "Aren't they adorable? I just hope their wedding will be even cuter." I spluttered, breaking into a horrible coughing fit. "A wedding? A freaking wedding? A wedding with Tyler as the groom? A wedding between the man who kissed me yesterday and another woman?" I hopped into the driver's seat, unable to take in the shocked gaze of Julie, the sad face of Tyler, and the annoyed face of the redhead, who I could safely assume was Jessica. When did my life become an 8 o'clock soap opera? 5 days later. I was disappointed. No, I was livid. I understood him running off because his best friend kissed him. Not out-of-town type of understanding, but I got it. Having the audacity to return and kiss me knowing he literally returned with an entire fiancé was borderline crazy. At the same time, I blame myself for letting him back in. Casual hookups didn't count. If I had moved on, explored other romantic options, maybe this wouldn't be happening. So, I decided to make changes. Changes that landed me at Crystal's with Weston, surrounded by flickering candles and rose-petaled plates. I fidgeted with the candle stand. "Isn't this a bit much?" I thought dinner meant a clean t-shirt, pants, and sneakers. I was wrong, apparently, since Weston showed up in a suit, hair slicked back to expose his forehead. "Don't sweat it, you always look good," Weston complimented. Only 5 minutes had passed, and I already wanted to leave. Weston kept talking about politics and the low crime rate thanks to the police department. His enthusiasm was frankly exhausting. He was charming, but I couldn't muster enough interest. My mind kept drifting to Tyler, and his bride, of course. "Weston," I interrupted, remembering his odd reaction to seeing me with Tyler the other day. "Did you know Tyler's getting married?" The waitress brought our food over, delaying his response. I shook my leg impatiently, making a tapping sound that seemed to override the gentle piano notes that filled the air. "You didn't know?" Weston asked. I glared at him in annoyance. "Do I sound like I did?" "She's a celebrity, Jessica Ryan. One of Tyler's little Hollywood talents," Weston sighed, slicing into a steak. "You know, this is unhealthy. I knew it was, but I couldn't help it. I'm sorry for ruining the mood." Weston picked up my plate of uncut steak and replaced it with his. Finely diced cubes stared back at me, but I didn't say anything. I hated myself at that moment, despite his sweet gesture. It still didn't make my heart race. I tried to keep my attention on the conversation with Weston until a familiar figure strolled into the restaurant. Tyler. My heart started racing the moment I laid eyes on him. My stupid heart really didn't know how to let him go, but he wasn't alone. Jessica hung off his arm in a sexy black dress. They looked perfect together, and people seemed to agree with all the gazes they got. I wonder how they could feel if I was next to him instead. I wasn't polished like them. My hands were calloused from years on the farm. My brown hair and brown eyes paled in comparison to Jessica's fiery mane and green eyes. "Denny," Weston called out. I tore my gaze away from them, trying to ignore the uncomfortable feeling in my chest. "What were you saying?" But it was too late. Tyler's gaze locked onto mine. His eyes darkened at the sight of me with another man. Jessica seemed to notice, fixing her gaze on me too. She leaned up to whisper into his ear. As if activated by a magic word, his jaw tightened, and he stalked over to my table. Weston stood immediately, a polite but worried smile on his face. "Denny," Tyler said, voice low, "can we talk?" "Even if you left your eyes back in Hollywood, surely you can see that we're on a date," Weston growled through gritted teeth. Jessica seemed to enjoy the show, calling the waiter over to order a drink. It shocked and annoyed me all at once. Tyler clenched his fist. "You just couldn't wait any longer. You had your chance." Regardless of how movie-like this scene felt, the curious gazes from the other patrons were starting to bother me. I stretched my hand up between the two testosterone-charged men. "I think that's enough, Tyler. Don't keep your date waiting. Tyler's hand, warm and firm, clasped around mine, and he yanked me out of the seat and into his arms thanks to gravity. Don't make me go crazy in here, Denny. We really do need to talk. A thrill ran through me as his warm breath raked over my neck. People were looking. Unable to resist, Tyler pulled me outside. The cool night air was a sharp contrast to the restaurant's warmth, and as soon as we were outside, Tyler stopped and turned to face me. I have a date to get back to, so start talking, I snapped. Tyler patted his pockets, obviously looking for a cigarette. Why are you at dinner with Weston? Because he asked me out, I paused, feeling a sudden urge to hit him with my words. Also, it's high time I start finding a partner. I need to get married soon enough. In a few angry steps, Tyler shoved me against the wall, blocking me off with his body. Is your mother aware? I snarled, realization dawning on me. That I'm gay? She's my mother. Take a guess, Einstein. He looked even better up close. Recently, I'd never seen him looking anything other than perfectly groomed, but he obviously hadn't shaved today. Wasn't he supposed to be happy? Do you think I'm gay? He whispered. Had he finally lost his goddamn mind? I leaned my head against the brick wall. Are you trying to make me a gay assessor of some sorts? For someone I love so much, all he seemed to bring was confusion and pain. I needed closure. This had to end. Why didn't you tell me you were leaving? Why didn't you contact me or reply to any of my messages? Tyler took a deep breath, placing his forehead against mine, highlighting the slight height difference as he towered over me. My father wanted me to join him in LA, but you were so excited about prom and graduation, so I decided to tell you after prom. But then you kissed me. I got confused. So you ran and decided to never speak to me again? What a joke. No, Tyler exclaimed, taking a step back. My phone got lost during my first week in LA. When I got time to think about the kiss and everything, I couldn't reach you. I don't believe you, my chest twisted tightly. You could have sent a letter or something. He exhaled heavily in disbelief. I sent you emails all the time. I tried to get my mother to get your number or something, but she said you didn't want to talk to me. Emails? Freaking emails. I was 17 for the love of God. Why would I be checking my emails when everybody my age used SMS? How else was I supposed to reach you then? In hindsight, I imposed the don't talk about Tyler rule a week after he traveled. My mother also stopped trying to talk about him after a month, so that was why. Tyler's eyes were locked on mine, and I could see the earnestness and fear in them. His breath mingled with the chill of the evening as he tried to find the right words. Denny, he started, his voice low and shaky. I ran away from that kiss because I was scared. It wasn't just that you were a boy, it was more than that. I liked it, more than I was ready to admit. I didn't want to believe I was gay, or at least I didn't want to admit it to myself. I looked at him, stunned. The revelation was like a punch to the gut, but at the same time, it was a relief. I'd been waiting for an explanation, a reason why he disappeared without a trace. In LA, Tyler continued, I tried dating men for a while, but it never felt right, so I returned to dating women. I thought maybe it was just a phase, or that it was something I'd outgrow. I convinced myself it was just childhood exuberance. I didn't want to deal with it. And now? I asked, my voice trembling with emotion. Now that you're back? He took a deep breath, his eyes searching mine with vulnerability I hadn't seen in years. When I came back to plan my wedding, I knew I needed closure. I needed to see you again. But when we kissed by the lake, it was like opening a can of worms, the feelings, the connection. It was even stronger than it ever was before. I can't keep lying to myself. I think it's you, Denny. His words hit me like a tidal wave. The ache in my chest flared up, mingling with hope. I reached out, pulling him close. Our lips met in another passionate kiss, more intense and desperate than before. The world around us seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of us and the electric connection between us. When we finally pulled apart, breathless and slightly dazed, I couldn't help but wonder about Jessica. What about her? I asked, my voice soft. What happens to her? Tyler's face softened with regret. I already had a conversation with her. We ended things. I took her out to one last dinner before her return to LA. It was the least I could do. I nodded, a mix of relief and sadness washing over me. I couldn't even lie that I felt bad about it. So, what happens now? Tyler's eyes were full of determination as he gazed at me. I'll be damned if you go back in there to giggle with Weston over diced steak. What type of psycho dices their steak so well? I stifled a giggle at his jealousy. So, does this mean you're returning to LA? Nah, I'll stick around. Are you chasing me away? I shook my head. Not even in his wildest dreams. A week later, "Look at you two bickering like an old married couple," my mother said, her eyes twinkling as she poured another cup of coffee. Tyler raised his eyebrows and grinned. "I am just trying to help Denny out today, but he doesn't want me to. He's shaming me for being a city boy." "Hey, that's exactly what you are," I replied, clutching my side with laughter. "I just don't see why it's necessary for you to come along. You won't even know what to do except riding the horses." Tyler stretched his arms behind his head and leaned back in his chair nonchalantly. "I think I can handle a few cows, Denny." Our mothers gave each other a knowing look. Tyler's mom, who had never suspected it before, seemed to have realized her son was completely smitten by me. I was a little worried that she'd hated me. "Just be careful with the cows, Tyler," my mother informed jokingly. After breakfast, I made my way out, hoping Tyler would stay back, but as soon as I got to the doorstep, he followed right behind me. "Seriously, you don't have to come," I said, trying to sound firm despite enjoying his Velcro behavior. "This is real farm work, not some city boy's adventure." Tyler just grinned at me, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Oh, come on, I've missed you. You can't get rid of me that easily." I reluctantly placed my Stetson on his head. "Fine, if you insist." He happily whistled a tune as we went out. I should have known something was up when he showed up in a loose t-shirt, jeans, and boots. The horses neighed as we approached, chewing noisily on their hay bales. Like clockwork, Tyler made his way to Duke, and I started saddling Midnight for him. "She's ready," I patted the saddle, waiting for him to mount it. Tyler shook his head. "No, I want to ride Duke." "But Duke is my horse," I exclaimed, trying to hold back a pout. "In that case, then, I guess I'll take Midnight." But Tyler's face fell as soon as he heard that. "I meant we should ride Duke together." My face turned red, burning with embarrassment. Midnight will do. You can ride Duke." What would the workers think if they saw me on the same horse with Tyler? How embarrassing. With a playful smirk, Tyler climbed onto Duke and stretched out his hand to me. "It'll be fun, I promise." Reluctant, I climbed onto Duke, ignoring the spike in my heartbeat as his arms encircled my waist. The tingling was so intense and oddly comforting. While we rode across the farm, the morning sun covered everything in its golden touch. The workers greeted us loudly as we passed the grazing cows. At this point, Mrs. Henry appeared from nowhere, clutching a bucket filled of fresh milk from our dairy cows. "I told you so," she yelled out with glee, her voice dripping with amusement. My face burned scarlet hot, and I hid my head in Tyler's vibrating chest as he laughed and waved back at her. "I don't want this to end," I whispered, resting my back against Tyler's chest. "But you'll have to return to LA eventually." Tyler's arms tightened around me. "Who said I'm leaving now? Even if I do, I'll come back as many times as I have to. There's no way I'm leaving you." My heart soared at his words, and I turned my head slightly to look at him. "You really mean that?" "I do. I love you, Denny." The words felt like a balm to my soul, and I leaned in, whispering back, "I love you too." We reached the lake, still astride Duke, the world around us fading into a blur of golden light and gentle ripples. Tyler gently tilted my head back and kissed me, his lips warm and soft against mine. I still had a lot of questions, a lot of things I wasn't sure of. Hell, I didn't even know if we'd make it past our first separation. But when he finally pulled away, our foreheads resting against each other, I felt like we were suspended in a perfect moment. The lake, the horses, the warmth of Tyler's embrace seemed to create the world meant for us. Tyler returned to LA 2 weeks later. From LA to Wyoming, distance highlighted our differences, but that didn't stop us. Like he promised, for every time he left, he returned. Of course, from Hollywood to farm, it will be a huge change for Tyler. But I'm sure together, we'll be able to face any challenges that may come our way. The end. Can unresolved feelings from the past influence the ability to find closure? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become part of our Rainbow Force, and stay wholesome.